Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the latest Hurricane Tracker app video update recorded Friday, September 2nd, 2016 at 9 p.m. If we take a look at our overview map this evening, we can see there's still quite a bit of activity in the tropics. We have Hurricane Lester over here in the Central Pacific, which has prompted hurricane watches for Hawaii. We have Invest 92L, which is back on the map, and we'll take a look at that very quickly in this video. And we have Tropical Storm Gaston headed out into the far open Northeast Atlantic. And finally, we have Tropical Storm Hermine currently situated over the Carolinas. First, I want to start with the latest 5-day outlook from the National Hurricane Center. Invest 92L. Remember, this was the wave that came off of Africa about 4 to 5 days ago. The models were all over it. It had so much potential, but it ran into a large area of the Saharan air layer, that very dry, dusty air mass, which dried out the system very quickly. So only a 20% chance of development down the road. If any development occurs, it'd be very slow to occur, and less than 1% chance right now of this becoming a hurricane. All right, the main story over the last week and a half has been Hermine, which was 99L. We started tracking it well over a week ago. Right now, Tropical Storm Hermine is located about 50 miles to the northeast of Charleston, South Carolina. Maximum sustained winds are 50 miles per hour. It is moving briskly to the northeast at 20 miles per hour. We do have tropical storm warnings in effect pretty much from the Georgia, South Carolina border all the way up through the entire coastal sections of North Carolina, up through southeast Virginia, the Delmarva Peninsula, all the way up to Sandy Hook, New Jersey. And then north of there, we have a tropical storm watch in effect for Long Island as well as the Connecticut coast. Over the next few days, Hermine is going to basically just sit and meander offshore. What I want you to focus on right now, still here we're 2 to 3 days out, is not focus on the exact track and the forecast points from the Hurricane Center, but focus on the cone of uncertainty. There are some models that are bringing this system closer to the coast, and that seems to have been the latest trends with the models this afternoon and evening, while we have other models that show it further offshore. Right now, we're leaning that the system is probably going to get at least within 100 miles of the shore and basically just kind of sit around here. It could even do a loop or two. And the western side of the storm, depending upon how close it'll get, will determine the wind and rain impacts. But even if the system stays further offshore, let's say a couple, 2, 3, 400 miles offshore, as the track shows from the National Hurricane Center, we're still going to have some coastal flooding issues, beach erosion, definitely high waves, very rough seas. So really, we're going to be watching very closely how close the center of the storm gets to the coast, and it looks like the water is warm enough so that this will potentially re-strengthen back into a hurricane, possibly by Monday. As of the latest forecast package from the National Hurricane Center, we can see the storm is located here over the low country of South Carolina. We do have tropical storm force winds that are occurring or will be occurring across the eastern portion of the Carolinas this evening. And then as we get into the Saturday evening through Sunday and Monday, we will see the system re-strengthen with winds above 60 miles per hour. Most of the strongest winds, again, based on the current forecast, are projected to remain offshore. But even with this current forecast track, it is close enough that we do have those tropical storm warnings in effect from the Tidewater up to the Delmarva Peninsula up through coastal New Jersey. Could definitely see tropical storm force winds of 39 miles per hour or more. So the exact track of this system is going to be key, once it emerges out into the western Atlantic. You can see throughout the day today, this is a current radar snapshot dumping tons of rain here, especially across central, eastern North Carolina. A lot of you folks need the rain. It's been a very dry, hot summer, especially in Raleigh and Charlotte. So hopefully you'll get some relief, and hopefully there's not too many major inland flooding issues going on, but a few more inches of rain is possible overnight as Hermine continues to move off towards the northeast. I mentioned a couple minutes ago the latest computer models. We have the European model over here, courtesy of Weather Bell, and we have the GFS model here over here on the right. You can see the European model and also its ensemble member mean is much closer. So if this were to verify, we would definitely see strong tropical storm force conditions here along the Delmarva Peninsula up through southern and central New Jersey. Now these wouldn't spread very far inland, maybe 50 to 75 miles at the most. Um, but the main concern here would definitely be the strong east and northeast feds that would be piling up the water here into the areas that are prone to storm surge. So that's something we're going to be watching very closely. Just how close does this get? And you can see the GFS model is a little further offshore, which again, we'd still have some tropical storm force winds. We'd have the winds around the northern eastern side of the storm bringing in that storm surge, which would lead to beach erosion, coastal flooding, and it's going to be a multi-impact system. As of the latest current forecast track, here is the rainfall projection from the WPC. We could easily see in southeast Virginia 4 to 6 inches of rain up to the Delmarva Peninsula, 4 or 5 inches, and even up through coastal New Jersey, we could see 2 to 4 inches. And again, the closer the system tracks, so if the track, instead of being more like this, if it's, let me change the color here a little bit. See, I can identify this a little better. So if the track is like this, we're not going to have as much rain. But if the track is closer, as the European is showing, the western side of the storm would definitely bring, localized heavy rainfall amounts and possible inland flooding. And again, right now, on the basis of the current forecast track, we will see at least 40-mile-per-hour winds along those areas where the National Hurricane Center has tropical storm warnings. I do also want to mention that there's been a lot of talk about this system coming because what's called post-tropical, meaning it could lose some of its tropical characteristics and be more of a cold core, more of a nor'easter type system. But we're not even going to discuss that because the impacts are going to be the same, whether it's a cold core or a warm core system. It doesn't matter. Fortunately, we all learned that lesson with Sandy. We're still going to have some wind and rain impacts and definitely some surge, coastal flooding, beach erosion. Now, keep in mind, this is forecasted to sit here for a couple of days and spin. So, the effects along the coast could be tremendous, unfortunately. For the Hampton Roads area right now, the Hurricane Center is forecasting a storm surge of 3 to 5 feet. We do have a storm surge warning in effect, and then we do have a storm surge watch in effect for the Delmarva Peninsula up through New Jersey, up into the Long Island and New York City region, where right now storm surge is forecast to be 2 to 4 feet. And yes, we could see waves over 25, possibly even 30 feet because of the length of time the system will sit there. Now, the water is very warm. It will be able to intensify, but at some point, if it's sitting over the ocean for 2-3 days, upwelling is going to occur. The warm pool of water does not extend super deep into the ocean as it does down in the very warm Gulf and Caribbean Sea. So the longer it sits there, it will pull up that cooler water, and eventually, after a couple of days, it should begin to weaken once it moves out to the northeast. So finally, we do have elevated alert levels up here. Obviously imminent tonight. We have ongoing rain and tropical storm conditions in the Carolinas, but as we move into Saturday and definitely through the early portions of next week, we could definitely see impacts up in this region. Not so much up here towards Cape Cod and Rhode Island, unless the system moves a little further north than forecast at this point. But basically that means right now you're under an increased risk of being impacted by an active or developing tropical cyclone. Build or restock your basic disaster supplies. Make sure you have food and water, flashlight, batteries, all the essentials you need in case there's prolonged amount of time of power outages. And of course, know how to execute your plans since those tropical storm warnings were issued by the National Hurricane Center. And of course, always follow the local advice of your local authorities and your local National Weather Service office. So again, unfortunately, it looks like because the system is going to be able to be stalled out along the coast, the impacts along the immediate coast, probably 50, 75 miles inland, depending upon how west the system tracks. Unfortunately, we could see more coastal damage than what we saw down in Florida. To be frank with you, this is a serious situation, and the forecast could still change. It probably will change, but right now the trends are for a system to sit off the mid-Atlantic coast for 2, possibly 3 days, with several impacts along the coast. Thank you for using the Hurricane Tracker app and for watching our video. We'll be here throughout the weekend and early next week with updates. Have a good weekend, everybody.